Hello and welcome to Fuel Flow TV. We are your hosts, Alex and Martin.
And you're watching the Talk Talk. Everyone knows the brand Nissan for their JDMs and the long culture. But for the young kids who think the Skyline and the Silvia range is the only Nissan car, today we'll be talking about the famous track car, the Nissan R390 GT1. Before that, we will dive into a brief summary of Nissan's history.
1911. Makoto Orichiya, a Japanese man, had the dream of making a car company. He wanted to rival other companies, so decided to make the Datsun, which would later be a sub-brand of Nissan.
In 1915, Makoto made the first ever Nissan car, the Dat Type 1. Nissan decided not to produce any more cars until a few centuries later, Datsun made the 260Z. At this, Nissan was a side company and still producing cars from this portion. We will focus on more Nissan.
But before we focus on more Nissan, we shall focus on the Datsun 260Z being a beautiful work of art.
If you don't know what a 260Z is, basically it's the same replica of the 240Z, but with like added new features and maybe better performance in engine and looks.
And basically, it also looks very beautiful. You'll see it in a lot of Japanese car culture. If you're really good at Japanese car culture, you will know the Midnight Club. If you're good with car games, then you'd know it's a game, but it was based off the real Japanese crew Midnight Club. And they had a beautiful 240 to 260Z. And mind you, it was a decently fast car at the time, but the owners made it and pushed it to its limits.
Talking about the 240Z, there is one game that made the 240Z so famous. If you ever heard the game called Wanging Midnight, the editor will like probably tell you the spelling of that game, and it's also an anime, like an anime series. The main protagonist, whose name is Akira, he drives a 240Z in blue. Since that car got like so much curse from the previous owners, they called it the Devil Z.
And that was based off actual Japanese folklore. But we will skip over that and come back to the normal routine of the beautiful car. 1968, the Nissan R380 came out as Nissan's first official racing car. Some few years later, the R381 came out as its next generation version, followed by the Nissan R382 and then the R383. Nissan went quiet on race cars and focused more on civilian cars until the R88C. Then Nissan started to think, well, how about we design race cars and civilian cars at the same time? So that's what they did. They made the MPT 90 and the R90C in the same year. The only real difference between the two is materials used, the chassis, and the engine. Then they made the R390 GT1, their final race car of the 1900s. I'd like to add a little note. What I mean by they stopped producing race cars, I do not mean the Skyline or Sylvia series, because they were built race cars.
Well, talking about the Skyline, let's dive into the history of its motorsport racing, where Nismo helped the Nissan R390 GT1 to get into Le Mans. After returning to the sport car racing in 1955, Nismo, or Nissan Motorsport, has a measure of the success with their Skyline GT-R LM, which is the R34, which had competed in the GT1 class. However, these cars were quickly outpaced by the influx of new manufacturers who were using loopholes, the GT regulations, to build racing cars that bore little resemblance to their GT1 class competitors. Examples being the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR, and the Porsche 911 GT1. And fun fact, the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR, we're gonna go a bit of the story today. The Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR was indeed the car that went flying and do like too much backflips in the Le Mans series. If you don't know what that means, or if you haven't known that yet, you can search that on Google or maybe find it on YouTube. It will tell you the whole story of how it went there. And since we're talking about that, we're probably gonna make a video out of that one too, so make sure to stick around for that. So turning to Tom Walkinshaw Racing, or TWR, Nismo began developing a prototype of the R390 GT1, named to follow in the tradition started in 1960 with Nissan's R380. The first decision for Nismo and TWR was a choice of engine. The previous Skyline GTR LM, the R34, had used the trusted and the most beautiful and beloved JDM engines ever, one of the best since the 2JZ, the RB26DETT inline 6 engine. But the design was old for a racing car, employing an iron block which added weight and a high severity. Nismo instead chose to resurrect engines from Nissan R89C, which they used a VRH 35Z, was a 3.5-liter, 3,495cc V8 engine, which used an aluminum block as well as having low center of gravity and a better ability to use as a medical stress member of the RB26. Thus, the engine was modified and designated the VRH35L would produce approximately 6,500 psi, not 6,500, 650 PS, over 478 kilowatts and 641 horsepower at 7,000 RPMs. The car styling was led by Ian Cullen of Tom Walkinshaw Racing. Its chassis were made of a full carbon fiber monocoque chassis. The suspension from the front and rear was a double wishbone push-rod system. The wheelbase is at 107.1 inches or 2,720 millimeters. The transmission was an X-Track 6-speed sequential manual. It weighed about 1,098 kilograms or 2,421 pounds. Its tires were using Bridgestone tires for their race car. The constructor was Nissan Motorsports. Their designer was Tony Southgate and Ian Callum, Yukata Hagiwara, R383, and their successor was the R391. So, Alex, you wanna add something?
With the GT1 R390, they went with the other model engine, which BRH35L was the best one, which it definitely was. It was one of the greatest decisions they could make for their time, as they also put it as a real drive engine, and the 6-speed transmission was just a beautiful touch. That's why when you see clips of it or anything of it racing, it can go past 220 miles per hour, which would be 354 kilometers per hour. The drivers of all the cars well, for the GT1 R339, uh, yeah, 390, my bad, there was over 16, and that just is astonishing that 16 plus people wanted to drive this beauty of a car.
The race car drivers that raced against everyone using the R390 was Kazuyoshi Hoshino, Masahiko Kageyama, Aguri Suzuki, Satoshi Motoyama, Takuya Kurosawa, Masami Kageyama, Martin Brundle, Michael Crum, George Mueller, Jan Lammers, Wayne Taylor, Eric Van de Poel, Ricardo Patrese, Andrea Montarini, Eric Thomas, Frank Lagros, and John Nielsen. There's like 16 of them, and if I said them wrong, just tell me in the comments if I pronounce them wrong. They got two races in that 1997 24 Hours of Le Mans. Speaking of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the three cars finished in a black and red livery were the fastest in their first competition, with Martin Brundle taking pole position in May's pre-qualifying with a staggering time of 3 minutes 43.15 seconds. That's like almost the time that the Audi team of the LMP2 is making in the modern day 24 Hours of Le Mans. At the race itself, one R390 GT1 or 22, the number 22, was able to qualify in the fourth on the grid and second in its class behind the Porsche 911 GT1, while its partners qualified 12th, the number 21, and 21st for the number 23. During the race, both cars were able to perform admirably, but soon began to struggle with the gearbox problems, and around halfway through the race, the two of the three cars, the number 21 and 22, finally succumbed to mechanical failure and were withdrawn. The third R390 was able to survive the rest of the race.